were the way in, the going to a yoga class and like getting on the mat and breathing and moving and then lying down at the end. For most students in, you know, in Australia and in Canada, that's their doorway into yoga. And some students stay there. That's what yoga means to them. It's a place to move and breathe and feel good in their bodies and relax at the end. And some students start to pick up philosophy or start to pick up some of the meditation techniques or breathwork techniques and want to take those home with them to add to their lifestyle, right? And you were one of those people. Everyone listening was one of those people because you went on to do yoga teacher training, right? I want to share this with other people. Yeah. Asana is the gateway drug. It absolutely is. Yeah. Today we're talking about what yoga means to me. And for me, I remember starting yoga. I was really stressed out. I'd started a business. I didn't know what I was doing. And I was really stressed out. And I met a woman who was a local yoga teacher for the purposes of sort of just making connections, developing my community. And she recommended that I start taking yoga. And I was doing a lot of movement at the time. So when I went to and I'm very flexible. So I went to the class, like the movements weren't challenging, but it was challenging for me to be present in those movements. And I found that really interesting, that doing simple movements challenged me so much to not be, oh, and I've got to do this and I've got to do that. That's where my brain was at the time. Had a really, really busy brain. So for me, that was sort of the gateway drug of like, oh, this is what it feels like to just be doing one thing and not multitasking and not worrying about the rest of the world and like just being here. And that was for me, my gateway into yoga was discovering that I'd somewhere along the way lost that capacity. And yoga was giving me a place to sort of find that. And that was really wonderful and also really challenging. Yeah. And so for me, that was kind of my gateway. It wasn't just the movement, which I enjoyed, but the experience of being in a space where present momentness was a focus, was prioritized, not just getting through the class, right? It was like, how are you getting through the class? Does that make sense? Well, I can only speak to my experience that sometimes life happens in such a way that you lose track of that and how important that is. And it's so amazing to rediscover that and to have someone hold that space for you, right? So that you can return to being present and being with yourself and giving yourself time, right? I know for a lot of students that I've worked with, they're like, I don't care what we do on the mat. I don't care how you sequence. I don't care what techniques you do. I care that I have this hour for myself to be with myself and not carrying the weight of the world and not having to think about what's the next thing I have to do and what I have to remember. And is that this time just for me? So much of what we learn is from our students and those moments that we have after class where they say, this was amazing, or this is what I really liked, or this is how I felt. And we can take those little morsels of feedback and go, oh, okay, I'm getting what these students are experiencing and what they're looking for and what they value. And that helps you in the future with your sequencing and programming and thinking about what kind of space you hold, right? All of that kind of guides you in a path. I remember teaching a corporate class and thinking, going in with this sense of, oh, well, these people have been sitting all day, they really want to move. And over time, sort of seeing and hearing their feedback, realizing these people want to lie down. So like 50 minutes of movement and 6 minutes of relaxation to like, I was leaving 15 minutes for relaxation in a 60-minute class because that was the feedback I was getting. That's what yoga meant to them. was a space to do a little bit of movement and then lots of lying down, lots of relaxation, lots of meditation.
Yeah.
And that was an interesting process because I had, and you have to a certain extent, I had imposed my idea of what I thought that class was looking for. And then, or I had to start someplace, right? I had to use the gateway drug of asana. And then looking and listening and observing and paying attention, realizing, this needs to shift. This, they're not just here for us, they're here for this as well. And so being open to hearing that feedback and being open to those little moments that you have with students before and after class or in between classes where they tell you what was special for them, right? And that kind of starts to give you an insight into what yoga means for your students. Yeah. Because there's a lot of reasons that people practice yoga, right? Some people are there. Why are our students doing yoga? Some people are there just to move their bodies. Some people are there to get stronger or to get more flexible or to develop their balance or to improve their sports performance. Some people are there because that's the class that's on the day and at the time that they can make it to the studio or the gym or the community center or whatever, right? And some people are there to meditate, and some people are there to be with other people, and some people are there to learn more about yoga. And so how do we hold space and conduct a class when there's all those different meanings out there in your class, all those different reasons for participating? Do you have a sense of how you navigate that? There's not a supposed to, though, right? Like you've got to teach to the students in front of you. So you're using
Yeah.
two strategies here. You're teaching a slow flow class. That's a thing, right? If you're going to slow down the class, which a lot of students are keen to move in that direction these days, then you've got to take poses out, right? If you're
Right.
going to
Yeah.
slow the pace down, then you can't put every pose into your sequence. So you've got to consider sequencing and developing a balanced class that doesn't have every pose in it, right? And that's a challenge. You know, looking at, do I have the 4 movements of the spine? You know, have I strengthened the front of the body, the back of the body, the sides of the body? You know, have I included something from each sequence of the practice? So warm up, sun salutations, standing poses, balancing poses, seated poses, strengthening, right? All of those, you want to make sure no matter what's happening that you've got something from each of those sections right now while you're in your studies. Yeah. The other strategy that you're using is tell, show, do. So a lot of times when we go to a movement class, all 3 of those things are combined, that we're demonstrating and talking and the students are following us. But when we have new students, it's great to use this tell, show, do strategy, which you're using. First, I'm going to tell you what we're going to do. Then I'm going to show you what we're going to do. Now we're going to do what we're going to do. So really breaking down, instead of just throwing sun salutations at students straight up, let's break this down. These are the movements. Here's what we're going to do. As your students develop their practice, how our sun salutations are developed is that we've got the half standing vinyasa, which introduces basically the first half of sun salutations A. So you can go through that vinyasa a couple times and students go, I get this. I'm breathing, I'm moving. These are the movements. I'm flowing from one to another. They're getting used to like powerful pose and forward fold, all those movements. Then you add on the rest of sun salutations A. They've already learned the first bit, so that's become comfortable and familiar, and then you add on, right? So as your students come more regularly to class, you're not going to need to do the tell, show, do as much. And you're going to be able to ease them into sun salutations using, you know, the half standing vinyasa and then the sun sals A and then sun sals B, where we add warrior 1. It's something to juggle, right? Because especially in the gym, you're going to have people dropping in and out all the time, right? So you're often going to have your regulars who've been coming to your class for years, and then you've got someone brand new to yoga. And how do you negotiate the space between those people, keeping the beginners safe and giving them a comfortable entrance into yoga, but also keeping your regulars in the flow that they know and having an experience, right? And that's a balance we're kind of always negotiating, right? With those all levels drop-in classes. And one way to do that is to keep asking questions and talking to your students and finding out why they're there. Like, are they there for fitness and or health or well-being? Are they there for meditation? Are they there to learn more about yoga? Do they want to workshop poses with you? Right? Do they want to learn more about alignment or how they might adapt a pose, or doing fun variations of poses? So those are questions you can kind of keep asking along the way so that you can keep refining your class for that group of people, if that makes sense. Don't worry about not fitting every pose into every class. Even in an hour, you're not going to be able to teach every pose in our sequence list. And so that's just going to be a matter of deciding what to keep in the sequence and what to discard for today, right? And in your training portal, there's some guidance on that, on like, first of all, what's out, and then what do I definitely want to keep in, and then what's the overall theme of your class. There's ways to make those decisions. So you've got to be teaching to your students. That's important. That's keeping them safe and moving at their pace. And for your learning, you've got to be figuring out how you're going to teach in the spaces that you're going to be teaching in, right? You're going to be teaching in the gym in a 60-minute class. You've got to practice that, because that's the thing you're going to be doing. It does have to be oriented around, their experience level, their fitness level, their needs and goals. And if you can't get that with the practice classes you're teaching, it's great to go out and find another place where you can teach those things that are missing from your existing classes. Studying yoga, when we switched to online, one of the things I really missed was being able to have less formal conversations about yoga. Like, yeah, you've got all your technical studies online and everything's organized and you've got all the material there, but so much comes up and we learn so much from each other when we have less formal conversations, right? When we let ourselves roam around, a topic or just chat about yoga. Like, there's so much for us to all be learning from each other. So that's what group coaching's really all about, is being able to have those conversations and hear other people's experiences and insights, and like what's going on in your teaching and what's going on in your practice and how have your students responded to this thing. And I think that's really important. I think that's important on an ongoing basis. Like, once you're teaching, sometimes it can be kind of lonely. You're this person on the stage or at the front of the room who's your students are looking at you like you know everything, and you don't know things. And it can feel sometimes like an overwhelming responsibility. And it can feel sometimes like, how am I going to get to this place where I know everything? And when you get to talk to other yoga teachers on a regular basis, you can understand, yeah, we're all feeling that. And we can't know everything, but we can keep gathering information and insights from each other that can support us in what we're doing, and that we're not alone in what we're doing, and we're not alone in what we're feeling. And for me, that's been an important thing. When I first started teaching yoga, I really was on my own. Like, I didn't have a teacher community. And I didn't like that. It wasn't a good feeling to feel like I had this burden of being, the guide of a class, and I didn't have any group of people that that I could support and could support me in playing that role. And so developing community has been really important to me for that reason. Having a community of other teachers to talk to really helped me deal with, I was so worried for a long time about making a mistake. I felt so overly responsible for the safety and well-being of my students in ways that were not at all my responsibility. And I didn't really know how to navigate that. I didn't, and it took other teacher friends to really help me through that. As I spent a lot of time worrying and feeling responsible, and if someone's knee hurt in class, I felt like there's something I've got to do about that, and it took my teacher community to help me to understand what my role was and what it wasn't, and like how to hold a safe and loving space without feeling like I had to fix everything that was going on for my students. That, because no one needs that level of responsibility. That's not our job. Your students try to put you in that position, right? So, because I'm not your doctor and your yoga teacher, but that took a long time. And that was a big part of the benefit I got from my early yoga community, was learning that, which I didn't figure that out by myself. That, like our job is like, here are movements, and here are versions of movements, or like here are ways that you can accommodate for whatever's happening in your body today. And like that's, for the students, that's where they learn about their bodies and how they can care for their bodies, which isn't our job.
Yeah.
Right. And really easy to fall into that trap of, you've sequenced a whole class and then someone comes in and says, I don't want to do anything around this body part. And it's like, I can't teach a well-rounded class and not address that. But like, yeah, listen to your body. These kinds of props might be useful for you, take your time, whatever advice you're giving. But yeah, you can't rewrite a class for every student. And this is one of the things that's a challenge, trying to share the essence of yoga and teach a well-rounded class and hold a safe, transformational space for students to be in, and make sure you've got room at the end for relaxation, and making sure that you're keeping each pose accessible and offering options. And there's a lot going on there. So at a certain point, I know for me, at a certain point, I had to hand responsibility back to my students, right? Like my sense of my responsibility in every facet of that was maybe too much for one person to handle. And I had to start saying to my students, you're the one living in your body. You know what feels comfortable and doesn't feel comfortable. So you make choices about how you're going to move. I don't need to make those choices for you. I don't actually know what it feels like to be in your body. I don't know what makes your shoulder tweak, or, what position your wrists need to be in down dog to make them more comfortable, but you do. So here you go. Here's permission for you to find comfortable spaces in poses for your body. And here's some props, and, here's some regressions and versions of poses. And then you make choices. And what's great about that is not only does it take the burden off you to make choices that you're not qualified to make and that you don't have all the information to make, but it empowers your students to start to think about how they can care for their bodies. Autonomy, yeah, and agency, right? That like, I don't need to be the boss of your body. You can be in your body and listening to its messages and responding. And think about the difference between those two things, of having someone tell you what to do all the way through class, or to be given guidance and make choices. Which one is going to translate better off the mat, right? When students go out into the world, having spent that time having agency, making choices, being empowered, that's going to maybe change the way they approach their body outside of yoga class as well, in how they're sitting in the car, or standing at the sink washing dishes, or riding their bicycle to work, or all the other ways that we move and hold our bodies in a day. I think practicing making choices in yoga class is a better way to bring yoga off the mat and into our lives. Right?
Yeah.
And then when we weave philosophy into that, like, you know, non-harming and contentment and truthfulness, right? Like, when we weave that into our classes as well, it not only gives our students that time in movement, but it gives our students that time to think about how they approach themselves and how they approach movement and why they might make choices in what they do with their bodies, right? And so weaving those ideas into your class is another way to give meaning to yoga beyond asana, and
Yes.
to give people ideas for how they might take yoga back out into their world, so that they don't just once a week or a couple times a week have a really beautiful, mindful, joyful, calming experience in your yoga class, but they can create that experience for themselves. I think one of the big things yoga has done for me is made me a lot more curious about myself, a lot more curious about the world, a lot more curious about other people. And I find that really empowering, that's given me a place to learn every day. I mean, you know how it is when you're teaching other people. You can have all the theory and all the strategies and know all the techniques, and then you get a group of people in front of you, you're like, oh, all these people have, you know all their different goals and their aims and their needs and their bodies responding in all these different ways, and like, it's so exciting to be able to bring together a group of people and share an experience, even though everyone's having their own individual experience, to be able to share an experience together, right? And to have meaningful time together, even though we might all be there for different reasons, right? So the people who are there for fitness are having their experience, and the people who are there to meditate are there for their experience, and the people who are there just to have some calm, there for their experience. Um, and but we can all be there and share that time and space, right? I love the idea of that. I love the experience of that. Yeah, we do need each other. And that, for me, because I'm not teaching face to face at the moment, that's why I'm keeping some private virtual clients that I get to see every week, because I love teaching yoga, first of all. But like, that gives me a chance to hold space for someone else and to be with someone else for an hour and move and breathe together and talk and have connection. A lot of the people, that I work with, um, also, work from home, or, need that time of connection. And one of the things I've always loved since I was a personal trainer, don't let me go over time, is giving someone my attention for an hour. Like, what a powerful thing that is. I really worried when I started. I'm such a worrier. All my stories start with, I really worried. But I really worried about, like, giving everyone the right exercises and like being the most technical personal trainer. And I, it didn't take long for me to realize that a lot of my students just wanted someone to work out with. They wanted a workout buddy. Like, it was great that I was educated and skilled, but like, they really just wanted someone's attention for an hour. Someone to keep them
Yeah.
motivated and accountable, and
Yeah.
obviously give them whatever exercises they needed to do to meet their goals. But like, just to have someone hold space for you for an hour and be with you, while you do challenging things, whether that be a workout or a yoga asana or meditation, right? To have someone hold space and be there with you while you do that challenging thing of being quiet, right? Like that's a really beautiful space to hold for people. And so, I hope we all find more and more opportunities to do that for students and to help bring the meaning of yoga to students, whatever that's going to be for them. So, as I wrap up, because I'm afraid we're going to run out of time, if you're not sure what yoga means to your students and what kind of space they're looking to be held for them, you can ask. You can use the AIMS cards that are in your training portal. You can do a survey if you want to, or you can just keep having those little conversations, before or after class. If you want it to be more formal, you can ask students about, like, what does yoga mean for you? Is it about your health or your fitness or your well-being? Is it about, you know, bringing you into a space where you feel like you're better at relationships? Is it about giving you a platform to make more conscious choices and decisions? Like what is it that you get from yoga that keeps you coming back, right? So finding ways to ask students those questions, and even if they don't have an answer, then they can take that question, oh, why do I, my life is busy, why do I keep coming to yoga? Because I love it. What do I love about it? And that gives them something to ponder, right? And for yourself as a yoga teacher, I recommend going through the same exercise, uh, so that when students ask you, what is yoga, you have a succinct answer. The longer you study yoga, the harder that question gets to ask. What is yoga? Oh, you know, when I started yoga, I would have said, oh, you do some moving and some breathing and then you lie down. Now I'm like, oh, do you have an hour or two? Because you do want to practice having a succinct answer to that question, what is yoga? Um, and you do want to be able to communicate to people what yoga means to you, why you find it meaningful, like what impact it has on your life and what draws you to yoga. So, like, here's generally what yoga is, and here's personally what yoga is. And so taking some time to ask yourself those questions and see if you can come up with some answers. Yeah. What are we going to say about yoga? Right? What are we going to say about its impact and its accessibility, and how it can be such a meaningful part of your life, right? So
Yeah.
what are you going to say about that to your students? There's not a right wrong answer, but there is, yeah, you don't want to be standing there going, oh geez, that's a big question, I don't know. I've thought about it. So you do want to think about it. Um, and you maybe want to write it down or put it on your social media or your blog, or, put it in your journals to me, so that, you've spent some time thinking about it and have maybe some clarity around that then you can share with others, right? And I really appreciate you being here with me today and talking about this and being part of my yoga community. Thank you. Hello to those of you who are listening. And thank you to those of you who are here, and thanks for your contributions. And I'll look forward to seeing y'all next week.